Well, hello everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of the Story to Screen podcast, the movie podcast where we review all different kinds of movies, new and old. I am your host, Chris, and joining me on this lovely, lovely night is Benjamin Curley and Ian Moffat. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey.
Thank you guys for coming onto the show tonight. Have you experienced any hot weather in your area lately?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
bit.
I mean, it only makes it more fun when the air conditioning goes out in your car and the windows don't roll down anymore. And
Oh yeah, that makes it very exciting.
oh, it's the best. You should try it.
I have a better recommendation. If you're experiencing heat, why not take the ACL water bucket challenge?
And be like all the other stupid people? Come on.
Yes. People who make no donations, who just simply do it for the fun of it. I am so baffled by this whole water bucket thing lately. I'm kind of wondering how many of those people are actually contributing to that cause.
Not gonna lie, like they've apparently raised a ton of money, but I'm kind of tired of that on my Facebook feed.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Hey, there goes another celebrity. And look, the caption says they do it in such a way that it's the most amazing thing ever, and they raise the bar. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, bucket of ice on the head.
The latest one was Superman.
Real groundbreaking.
The latest one was Superman and Lois Lane earlier today.
Well,
the
I'm
only one
inspired.
that I really laughed at was Patrick Stewart doing it. That was good.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
that was pretty good actually. Because he didn't pour ice on his head. He did it right. He wrote a check, and then he had a scotch.
There you go. There you go.
Yep.
Tonight's movie review will be the 1941 classic movie Sergeant York, starring Gary Cooper and directed by Howard Hawks. Before we go into our review tonight, let us go into weekly segments. So guys, have you seen anything good lately? Ian, we'll start with you.
The last movie I saw in the theater was The Giver.
Oh,
And that was just because the youth group from my church really wanted to see it.
Not The Expendables?
I wanted to. I really wanted to. But like,
didn't that have Harrison Ford in it?
Harrison
Yes!
Ford? No,
How
yes,
could you miss that?
Antonio Banderas, I know. I was really pushing for it, but like since the girls in the youth group kind of are in the majority, they were like, "Let's watch The Giver." I was like, "Okay." So yeah, I want to exactly describe that as a good movie. It's the same old story rehashed with mediocre cinematography. So yeah, other than that, it's been a couple weeks since I've seen anything in the theater.
So it wasn't that good then.
I guess it was all right. It wasn't exactly Citizen Kane, but for
Not
what
every
it was,
movie has to be Citizen Kane, but
but it would be nice to see something where they really tried.
yeah.
Because there's I kept thinking Hunger Games.
Yeah. It was definitely trying to appeal to the same, what's the word I'm looking for? Demographic.
Yeah.
That was very clear. I watched it. I actually, honestly, I have to give it a 4 out of 5 stars
Really?
for story.
Huh.
I thought it was really good story, very convincing. It killed me the way they left it, though. It killed me, and I know exactly how they should have resolved it.
Yeah.
But apparently, to those people who saw the book, it's actually a relief to see that much more.
I saw the book one time.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently,
On the shelf.
The book. Yeah.
Like, oh, there's the book. Okay, move on. I'm going to the cooking section over here.
All right, I submit. To those who read the book, Apparently, it carried it a little bit further. The book was a real cliffhanger.
Oh, okay.
But for quality, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm maybe 2.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
The book?
Yeah.
Generous.
Yeah, I'll give you that. The story was pretty good. It kind of they were obviously appealing to that particular demographic, but yeah, the rest of it was
Yeah. But come on. I couldn't be the only one thinking precision of language is actually a good thing that we could use.
I know, right? Is this really a problem?
Yeah.
So Ben, is The Giver a recommend or not really?
It is a recommend on my end. I think it's an excellent thought provoker. Same way Ender's Game was. Not quite as entertaining as Ender's Game, but it's definitely one you're going to leave the theater talking about for the next couple hours.
Okay. Do you think it might be in your top 5 favorite films of the year?
For the year, yeah, I think so.
Okay. We'll be doing a show like that towards the end of the year, so I'm looking forward to that. Well, before we begin, I just want to make a really quick announcement. On September 13th, Cliff Broadway from the OneRing.net will be joining us for our special review of the 1978 Lord of the Rings animated movie. Yes, there was an animated Lord of the Rings movie, and he'll be joining us for our review on that film on September 13th. Ben, I think you're still joining me for that one, right?
That is the plan.
Okay. So let's go ahead and just jump into our review.
Alvin,
Yeah?
Alvin,
Yeah?
Alvin,
You had your thumb sticking straight up in the air, just like that.
Oh, yeah, that gives me balance.
Oh, it gives you balance, does it? Ready? Aim. Fire.
How?
They won't get me. I'll go back in them hills.
You ain't even put hounds on your trail in 40, no matter how far back you go.
Then they better not catch up with me. Or they'll be a wishing they hadn't.
York, take over. The only non-com left.
The rest of you keep under cover.
Come back here. Where are you going?
You didn't give me command.
What you just heard was the original theatrical trailer for Sergeant York. It stars Gary Cooper, Walter Brennan, and it was directed by Howard Hawks, one of my favorite directors who's directed other classic films such as Red River, Rio Bravo, Bringing Up Baby, and His Girl Friday. Let me read the plot synopsis just real quickly. This is funny how IMDb has it right here. A hillbilly sharpshooter, drafted in World War I despite his claim to be a pacifist, who ends up becoming a war hero. When I first saw this movie, I think I was 10 years old. My dad actually got it off of Vision Forum. They actually had the videotape at the time, and
Wait, are we talking VHS here?
yeah, the VHS version.
Oh, yeah.
I really loved this movie. I mean, this is really one of those great films that just shows you the pilgrimage of an individual, showing his sinful nature, his sinful lifestyle, ultimately leading him to his conversion, leading him into something greater. It's also got this amazing performance by Gary Cooper. I mean, we'll talk a little more in depth about him, but one of those just really heroically admirable performances that I have ever seen. And famously enough, he won the Oscar for his performance, deservingly so, famously beating out Orson Welles for Citizen Kane. Well, for you guys, has this been a classic movie that you guys have been exposed to before?
I've seen it a couple times before, and I remember, I think the last time I watched it was quite a while ago, but I still had that impression from it, especially as a young guy, of going, whoa. Just looking at the story, his story, and how that developed, it can definitely draw you in, even as a young male who's rather distracted by other things. It's a good, solid story that really draws you in. I definitely remember that going into it, and it's a good film. Definitely in my probably top 10. It's a really well told story.
I saw this film first time, and probably last time, was about 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But it's one that I honestly remember most everything too. It's really, it's a very memorable story. And it's, same with Ian. I remember growing up and Sergeant York was like a role model. Like anytime I took my BB gun out, I wet the sights. I mean, no, it's one of those few films that you can point to and say, you know, when Hollywood, though it may be filled with unchristian people, ungodly people, you know, they can indeed write a story that's based in a biblical worldview if it's required of them. And that's, you know, Sergeant York's a point to for that.
Yeah. And they don't make the believers out to be a bunch of mindless, brainwashed.
Exactly.
No, they treated the Christians respectfully. And I think this was definitely a time when the film code at this point in time really, really emphasized common decency. You were not allowed to do all these things or to mock certain things. You know, there was a very respectful presentation when it came to presenting Christianity. I think they could take certain routes that maybe might be a little bit eye-raising at times, but they definitely managed to present the Christianity in this movie very well. And you know,
well within the confines of the story and who our characters were. I mean, the theology, it's like, well, I disagree with some of it. It's not the deepest, but for who our character is, for his understanding level, I think it worked really well with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And also you have to remember about that time in the film world, that was when, like, cause the 1930s, we don't see a whole lot of it, but the 1930s was kind of especially early 30s was kind of the crazy time for film.
Yes. Yeah.
And
the pre-code era.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't until like the late 30s when censors really started cracking down. So you get to a film like this and they kind of had to present it in such a way. But they did a good job despite, having, no artist really likes limitations like that, but they did a really good job in presenting it.
Yeah. The interesting thing was that Alvin C. York, the historical Alvin C. York, really had a huge input with this movie. Like, he didn't really have like a lot of control, but he was, he really was a big
reference. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a big reference. He really supervised this movie in terms of how to preserve the integrity of his image in this movie, and he was really trying to get that across. In one of the earlier drafts of the script, there was no war scenes. He was very ashamed of the course of action that he did, or because the reasons why he became so famous was because of the certain lives that he had to take, in order to. He stated many times that he was kind of ashamed of that.
Satan's got you by the shirt tail, Alvin.
Sure has. Head up, Noah.
He's gonna yank you straight down to hell.
You were plumb right, Pastor.
You gotta make him let loose before it's too late.
I sure wish I knowed how.
Wrestle him, Alvin. Wrestle him like you would a bar.
I done wrestling, Pastor, but... Oh, whoa there, Noah. Whoa, Noah. But old Satan, he hangs on tight.
You and the Lord could throw him, Alvin. Why, twixt the two of you, to have old Satan down a jiffy.
Well, I sure wish the Lord would throw in.
He will, if you ask him.
Oh, I done prayed, Pastor, till I was black in the face.
Specifically for this movie, I thought Gary Cooper portrayed that individual, that Tennessean very, very well, and I loved his conversion scene. I mean, that scene when he's converting to the Lord, the scene where they're singing, give me that old time religion. I love that little moment, and then you can see the reaction in his eyes, and I love how Gary Cooper's reaction to, like, it's just the sensing of the Holy Spirit just entering into his heart and being renewed. It's just so profound to behold. And then even during his scenes when he's at war and he's being this pacifist, he doesn't, a conscientious objector. I I'm engaged throughout the whole thing. I'm watching him every time he's on screen. I mean, I can't think of a scene where he's not in the movie.
Yeah.
No, I think he did a really good job. Just swapping back and forth between some of the other films I've seen him in. He's a very versatile actor, and I think he did a very convincing job of hillbilly sharpshooter. Like honestly, there'd be entire sentences. Is like I'd turn to Holly. It's like, now what did they just say? Let me break down the Tennessee slang that's actually still there. Now,
get some subtitles.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, okay, let's see.
His grammar wasn't very good.
Yes. Okay. Now I can follow the conversation.
I've actually read his book, which I actually recommend if you can find it, called Sergeant York and the Great War. And he's there using the Tennessee and slangs and terminologies and all that stuff, like twardent and why don't you come through here or something like that. And it's spelled in a very it's the grammar is very,
yeah.
So
well, it's probably like reading Mark Twain.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead. But anyway, go ahead and continue, Ben.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much all I had to say. I liked it. And it's a very slow moving film, but at the same time, every thought, every scene is thought out and has a point, and it slowly progresses you, and you at the beginning it's like, okay, what's this guy up to? By the end it's like you really care for this guy, and you really you basically moved to tears at the end.
Yeah.
The scene there when he goes to see the land and the house is built for him, and it's just really moving moment. But it took the whole movie to build up to that. It would not be as powerful without those slow minutes. Watching his mother's face as she studies him and sees him move around the house, and just seeing that bond and that respect. It's just, and what brings to mind is like, even bad boys love their mama.
Oh. Can I say I really love the relationship between him and his mother?
Mm-hmm.
That is, we can look at that image and say that's my mom. That's my mom. She cares. She loves us so much.
Well, yeah. You can step back and you can look at it and say, even with all the bad he's doing, she's still proud of him. He's still her son, and she still sees the best in him.
I actually do like the saloon scene.
The fight at the first saloon scene with the fight.
Yeah. What's funny? Even when they're showing his atheistic lifestyle, there's something humorous about it.
But yeah, it still feels clean and respectful.
Yeah.
It's not like a bar scene in a current movie, or even just walking into a bar these days, where it's like, okay, you got people with very foul mouths and who have totally ill intentions. This is very different, where everyone seems, to an extent, respectful and clean, and so I mean, even though they're drunkards, they still seem what's the word I'm looking for? Well, yeah, respectful.
They're reserved. Ian, do you want to weigh in?
I just like the Tennessee Kentucky line thing.
I just love the moment when he notices this beautiful woman, and then the woman notices him, and I guess you could say her boyfriend just like notices this staring between the two of them. He throws down the cards, like
yeah, it's like troubles a brewing.
And then it goes back to him. He's just got this like sloppy grin on his face, just like swaying back and forth. It's just
oh man,
yeah, that's a pretty good scene.
His journey to salvation was kind of interesting because he thought that purchasing land, bottom land, so to speak, it would make him a much more respected individual. When in reality, that was not the case. The problem was his faith. It was his spiritual well-being. That's what the thing that people were not respecting about him. At least that's what I kind of vibe. Did any of you kind of get that vibe from the characters?
Well, I think it was mainly just that he was a troublemaker.
Okay.
And obviously it was pretty well known that he was an alcoholic, and got into trouble when he was into alcohol. So there's definitely a concern there from the citizens that he straighten up and get right. And so I think that's one thing for me that was particularly moving about his that conversion scene, is all the people in the church crowding around him with just like this ecstatic joy on their faces.
Oh yeah.
To see him turn around, and it being just so obvious that he's had that moment of redemption.
Mm-hmm. Maybe put it this way: maybe he thinks that by getting the Bottomland, it would make him an important individual in the community. At least that's what he thought, maybe, because he seemed very determined to get this piece of land. Obviously, he wanted it to start a family with with what's her name again? Gracie. Yeah. And he thought he could, but that wasn't it. Through his conversion with the Lord, you notice that the people began to warm up to him a lot more. People began to warm up to him because of his changed heart, because of his changed mentality. I mean, heck, the guy is actually teaching Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about some of the war aspects. His reason for not going to war was mainly based on the fact that he said that killing is killing. It is not my place to kill. People need to live out their lives because it was what was granted to them by God. He felt like it was a sin to take another person's life because that person needed to live out his life. I think that's a very admirable idea because, one, you're keeping the commandment of thou shalt not kill, but at the same time, there's a difference between cold-blooded killing and a time for a necessary kill against an enemy that is a threat. And that is what I think his character fails to comprehend.
That's a debate that still goes on today, even within the Christian community. I mean, okay, do we fight a war? I mean, how do we define a just war? I mean, what is a motive for going to war? Why did God allow the Israelites? Why did He command them to go to war and kill? And what's different? What does Jesus command to pray for our enemies? Where do we draw the line there? And it's a really complicated issue. Basically, you have to break it down with, okay, what commands come first? Well, okay, I have a family to protect. Okay, my duty is to God and my family first. My family, my children may not be saved. Well, then I believe my duty to my children's safety is, if I can prolong their life and further their chance of knowing the Lord, then I think I'm duty-bound to do what's possible there. But then at the same time, okay, is someone holding a gun to my head asking if I'm a Christian? Do I fight them then? Or do I, take the martyrdom and gain the heavenly reward for it? Where is the line? And that's something that just can't be answered simply.
It's a very hard thing because it's such a point of view that people are so conflicted on. But I think we have to look at what the events in history as well. We have to, even in the Bible, because you look at Israel, look at the countless conflicts they were in. God ordered the people to do that because he knew that the people of Israel needed to survive, because they needed to.
Oh yes, and because it was God directly, He was also executing His judgment upon the heathen nations, which is His right as God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But also, that was also a time because they needed to defend themselves. That's the thing. That's the problem. What Alvin kind of failed to understand in a biblical context is that in history, the people of Israel needed to defend themselves against these nations. There's a difference between upright killing a person and fighting for the freedom for your own country. And the part where it finally hits him in the head, the part where he's sitting at that cliff, and then in his mind he goes into his Bible and he reads the part where Jesus tells them, give unto Caesar what is Caesar, and what belongs to God, to God. So I guess my question is, in that moment, like, what is it that finally converts him at that specific moment?
I mean, I see the logic behind that line of argument. I don't personally agree with it. I think that passage is speaking about other things.
Yes.
But I see the logic, and frankly, it eased his conscience. And if it did that, then I believe that's God. Mm-hmm. To do that for him in that particular. I'm getting in mud here, getting in dangerous waters here by making judgments like this. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. I don't want to start any arguments here, but
go ahead.
But I think because it was resolved in his conscience that we can trust that God used that, and that was God's plan. Mm-hmm. While I don't think that was the best interpretation of that passage, I think that is what God used that passage for in his life at that moment.
Yeah. Because well, actually, hold on before I go in. Ian, do you want to weigh into this? We haven't heard you talk that much.
I've been listening. It is a complicated issue. I think where Ben was going with the conscience deal, I think that plays a huge part. Because I do know some very dedicated, very faithful believers who are very good soldiers. And I think for a lot of them, the admonition, the statement in Matthew 26 where Jesus says, all who, at least in the ESV, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's so much a command to never take up arms. I think it's more of
a warning.
More of a warning. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like, not so much never do this, but just simply this is what's going to happen. So I think it's it's one of those things that's kind of up to the individual person. And if it really does offend your conscience to do something, to go to war, then it's perfectly within your right as a believer to not do that. Mm-hmm. So obviously it's not a simple thing at all, but there's really nothing I can find in scripture that would say never do that, especially in the New Testament, because I feel like the admonition not to kill is more of, especially with the explanation that comes after that in Exodus, it's more of a don't murder than don't ever kill at all.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot in the explanation of that in Exodus and in other places in the Old Testament that would indicate that, defense, whether on a civil or personal basis, is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember one verse that comes to mind is Ecclesiastes 3:8. A time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. There is these moments and times where war will happen, and you have to take arms. You have to take a course of action to do those.
Well, yeah. Well, you may not have to take up arms, but you have to make a decision.
You have to make a decision in that.
And if it is not agreeing with your conscience to take up arms, then you absolutely should not take up arms.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, you should not impose that on other people and assume that just because my conscience doesn't like it, you shouldn't do it either. I mean, that's I believe 1 Corinthians, talking about the, meat sacrificed to idols. It's a conscience issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just, using my nifty, eSword app here on my computer. If you don't have it, definitely get it. And it's got Matthew Henry's commentary on it. And his commentary on Matthew 26:52 is basically that the problem with what Peter did was that he did it without discretion. and it was just kind of, he grabbed one of apparently two swords that they had with them already, and he went to chopping without really thinking about it. And
his reactions, because they were going to...
Yeah, it was a quick reaction without knowledge. It wasn't guided by discretion. And to quote Matthew Henry, Peter struck before they had an answer. We must see not only our cause good, but our call clear before we draw the sword. And he indiscreetly exposed himself and his fellow disciples to the rage of the multitude, for what could they do with two swords against a band of men? So, obviously it based on that and everything else I see, it's not a light, it shouldn't be a light response to anything like that. It should definitely be a serious, contemplation, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be no corporal.
What's that?
I said I don't want to be no corporal.
Why not?
You wait a minute, Captain. Let him talk.
Well, you see,
Is it because of your religious convictions, York?
yes, sir. That's it. You see, I believe in the Bible, and I'm a believing that this here life we're living is something the Lord done give us, and we got to be a living it the best we can. And I'm figuring that the killing other folks ain't no part of what he was intending for us to be a-doing here.
Well, yes, in a way, I agree with you.
I missed an opportunity to jump back, so I'm going to jump back just a little bit to what we were talking about with him trying to get the land and get the status.
Sure, go ahead.
There's a parallel there that we didn't draw out, and that's that before Christ, he's trying to work his way in the world. He's trying to do everything in his own strength, and then after Christ, he's leaving it to God, and I think that that transitions over into the war where he's, it's okay, not in my strength, it's in the Lord's hands. Leave it to him.
Yeah.
And I think that was the big changing in his life, where he's like, okay, it's not in my hands anymore. I can't make something happen. That's very clear. I can't fail it or win it of my own accord. It's the Lord's.
Yeah, I think that's a better analogy of that whole arc during that sequence right there. It kind of reminded me of Jacob's 7-year commitment to Laban for working for 7 years just to marry Rachel. Because it's very similar when you really think about it.
I can see where you're going with it. I'm not sure.
It's not beat by beat, but I mean,
yeah.
Ultimately, he works for 7 years. He's nowhere near close to Rachel, and he gets Leia instead. And then he has to work another 7 years. And in Alvin's case, he works 60 days just to get the land. And all of a sudden, his competitor cheats him. Basically, not cheats him, but he just beated him to the punch, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing you have to take into account is before he starts doing that, he was asking his mother about what his dad had when they got married and what his grandfather had when his grandfather got married. And she was just like, oh, just a farm and some animals. And so, you could almost see the wheels turning and him going, all right, so what can I do for that? So, it's the typical natural inclination for a man to tie up his success into what he's accomplished.
Yes.
Which
is why we have so many workaholic dads.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So I think that played a big part in it. And like Ben said, it was kind of, he was trying to earn everything by his own hand. And then after his conversion, he realized that it really wasn't in his hands and he had to leave it up to God.
Oh, Corporal. There's something that I'd like to know.
Yes, sir?
That night that you reported back to me at Camp Gordon, you as much as told me that you were quite prepared to die for your country, but not to kill. What made you decide to change your mind?
Well, sir.
Of course, if you'd rather not tell me, why, it's quite all right.
Well, I'm as much against killing as ever, sir. But it was this way, Colonel. When I started out, I felt just like you said. But when I hear them machine guns are going and all them fellers are dropping around me, I figured that them guns was killing hundreds, maybe thousands. And there weren't nothing anybody could do but to stop them guns. And that's what I done.
You mean to tell me that you did it to save lives?
Yes, sir. That was why.
Well, York, what you've just told me is the most extraordinary thing of all.
Now, I'm going to be kind of honest. That battle scene at the end is... I really liked it as a kid. I really, really liked it. But I think because I've seen other...
And you wanted to like it now.
Yeah. It was one of those things where... Because I've seen, All Quiet on the Western Front, Paths of Glory, movies that I think have done the No Man's Land battle sequences with a lot of just gravitas and just fear and just this you just have no idea what could happen when you're in No Man's Land. That sense of fear, let me put it that way. I don't think this movie does that too well. I mean, yeah, there's some moments here and there where you get some close-up shots. Guys get, for a 1940s version, people get shot in the head and you see the blood kind of coming down.
Well, it's a very different type of filmmaking to make a war film. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, up to that point, it'd been a drama.
Yeah.
And so the entire style of the film needed to change, but it didn't. So that's why it really didn't have the depth that it could have. And they could have, maybe taught their stage actors how to die in a movie and not theatrically.
Yeah, there's like that one guy doing a 180 turn.
Yeah.
But he does it twice in a row. They do the up, and then they do the wide.
Oh yeah.
I kind of chuckled at that. Not gonna lie.
It kind of felt a little. Unfortunately, and I love Howard Hawks. I love how he does action movies. But that scene, I don't think it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's not terrible, but it's just kind of underwhelming. And I guess because it's what the other movies that I just mentioned do that particular segment far better in other movies.
Like Ben was saying, for that movie, it was decent. I mean, obviously, you can't go full Saving Private Ryan in the middle of drama,
Yeah.
Because it just wouldn't fit. It'd be the most jarring transition in the world. So I think for what they had up to that point, I think it fit. No, it wasn't the greatest action scene ever in the world, but it worked for the movie.
Have any of you ever seen All Quiet on the Western Front? Because that has some fantastic No Man's Land.
I read the book. I may have seen... I think it's from the German side, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, I've seen the movie. Yeah.
Okay, the black and white movie?
Yes.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
Okay. Yeah, that movie, and that's another, pre-code movie, and they got away with a lot of, that I would say is the Saving Private Ryan of its time. I mean, it's not like old guts and gore, but there are some images that are like, oh, wow.
Put your trust in the book, Alvin.
But here's another book, York. The history of the United States.
Them that live by the sword will be a perishing by the
The
sword.
government of all men to defend the rights of each man to defend the rights of all men.
Remember the Lord done said thou shalt not kill.
But the cost of that heritage is high. Sometimes all we have to preserve it, even our lives.
Obey your God.
Defend your country.
Your God.
Your country.
Your God.
Country.
God.
Country.
God.
Country.
God.
Country.
God.
Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Unto Caesar things which are Caesar's, and unto God, God.
And kind of closing up our thoughts here, this movie played a very important role with World War II, inspiring other men to go overseas, because this movie was getting a lot of controversy at the time, because a lot of people were accusing this movie of trying to
War propaganda.
Yeah, war propaganda and having public interference with the public opinion of whether or not we should enter the war. And this movie came out a couple of months before Pearl Harbor, actually.
It came out July 2nd, 1941.
Yeah.
So it was already in circulation by the time Pearl Harbor happened.
Yeah, so it had a huge impact around that time, and a very important one. I would definitely say it definitely had that important effect of inspiring other soldiers to go to war. And it was actually funny too, because when he did this, after he did this movie, Gary Cooper went overseas to kind of, to support the men, and he talked about making that movie with the men, and also his times that he met with Alvin, the real Alvin C. York. Actually, him and the historical Alvin York became really good friends up until Cooper's death, actually, which was really nice to hear about that.
Yeah, that is cool.
He actually sent him a note a couple weeks before he died, telling him, I heard that you're not in good health. I hope you get well. Godspeed and God bless, which I thought that was very nice and touching. Let's go ahead and wrap up our show here, guys. Sorry we didn't get into a lot of other things with this movie. I mean, there's so many great things about this movie. I mean, I give this a 100% recommendation. I mean, this is definitely one of those, a movie that I would definitely sit down with my own kids and show them, and this is a great movie to kind of show them the meaning of salvation, of genuine salvation, and what a person goes through, or at least this particular individual, but to kind of show them what it's like for that person to be converted in a very strong and powerful way. And I really highly recommend this movie.
Okay. Yeah. Highly recommend. I mean, this is definitely one of those films that I definitely want to show my kids to kind of give them, along with the other greats like Robert E. Lee and others, Teddy Roosevelt, people like that who stood up against great odds and stood with great courage and character. This is definitely a good film for something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. This is a film that I don't want to see lost to the sands of time. This is one that I want to keep, reliving and rewatching for years to come. It's I would honestly say story-wise and quality for the time period worthy of that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, just a wonderfully shot and just great performances. Guys, I forgot to say this. Walter Brennan, one of the greatest character actors ever in history. Like he's like the Christopher Walken of his time. He has that distinct voice that if once you hear him, you know who that is,
Yeah.
Yep.
So many classic movies with that guy. But anyway, so that's gonna do it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for reviewing this movie with me. Audiences, we're going to be taking a 2 weeks off because I'm going to be going on vacation. We're just going to be taking a little bit of time off, and then we'll be back on September 13th with Cliff Broadway for The Lord of the Rings. Benjamin, where can people find more of your work?
You can check out more of my stuff at indyvfx.com. That's INDYVFX.com.
Ian.
Look up apologiaproductions.com, and then you can also find that on Facebook. And I've got my personal music page, although I haven't updated it in a while, Ian M on Facebook. So those are the basic ones right now.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to our show. We'll be back in a couple weeks, and thank you guys for giving your websites out. We're going to be closing off. I am your host, Chris.
I'm Benjamin.
I am Ian.
Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll catch you in a couple weeks. Cheers.
Ciao.
Adios.
Ow! No, he's not here.
It just dawned on me today how much J.J. Abrams actually really loves killing off the established. I didn't even realize that's what was going on. I mean, he didn't reboot the series entirely, but he basically did that again with Star Wars. Just he killed off all the books and everything, and just he's going to start fresh. He just really loves doing that.
It was funny. We were talking about this the other day. So a friend and I said they might want to go back and remake the prequels, the prequel films, and I said to him, so you're saying that Abrams is going to do Star Wars Episode 7, Days of Future Past?
Which was a good movie, by the way. I finally saw that.
Oh, okay.
I still haven't seen it.
The CGI animated movie that came out in a couple of years ago was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that one.
So, okay, cool. So you saw that one in did you see that one in theaters?
Yep.
Okay. My mom and I actually treated my mom to go to take me to go see that movie in theaters. So
I'm impressed.
Wait. Let me get this straight. You treated her to take you.
That's quite a deal there.
It's the early ways of manipulation. Just how else am I supposed to go see a movie that I really want to go see in my and I couldn't drive. I mean, that's a justification there.
Hang on. What's this other Ninja Turtle movie that came out a long time ago? I totally missed that, whenever that was.
It's actually called TMNT. And actually...
it has Patrick Stewart in it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
It was the animated one.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking it up on IMDb. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Chris Evans is one of the turtles, I think.
Yes. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that one was actually fairly enjoyable.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. They were supposed to do a TV show off of that one, but it never came to fruition. So, but the terrible thing, I don't know if you saw the one with Henry Cavill as Superman, but he actually had 8 buckets of water as he was in the Superman suit, and they dumped it all over his head.
Please no, I don't want to see this. The mental image is terrifying enough.
No, the horrible thing is that the suit must have, because of the cold water, the suit must have tightened on him.
That's exactly why I don't want to see it.
He was like, "Oh, this thing is getting so tight on me. I can't breathe." Anyway.
So just PG-13 rated.
That's why he's gonna have to use the cape to cover his body, because he doesn't want anybody to see his body.
Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Anyway,